In a perfect, fair world, the best movies made would be rewarded with the highest intake at the box office. But, well, that's often not how it works at all. I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 terrible movies that still smash the box office.
Want to stay safe online and save big? Get up to 76% off a 2-year NordVPN plan, plus 4 months free and up to a $50 Amazon gift card. Just scan the QR code or click the link in the description and it's all yours.
Number 10, Resident Evil: The Final Chapter. Now, can any of the Paul W.S. Anderson Resident Evil movies be classed as good? Maybe the first one, but I do think that if they're not all conventionally good movies, they can all be classed as entertaining. Look, I mean, they never win an Oscar or anything, but they are good, big, daft popcorn flicks, and I know that I, at least, personally like to binge them once every couple of years. And the only one that I actually dread watching is Resident Evil: The Final Chapter. The long-awaited climax to the original run of RE movies didn't come with massive expectations, but they still were managed to not be hit with this final installment. Disregarding the previous movie's cliffhanger, bringing back characters who had run their course, and containing more dodgy flip-flops in the narrative than you'd expect to see on a Saturday down Whitley Bay, the final chapter lost whatever goodwill the previous installments had built up, and it didn't help either that the filmmaking in general had taken a step down, with Paul W.S. Anderson's signature flashy action sequences being over-edited and kind of dull affairs this time around. None of it stopped it from being the highest grossing entry in the franchise though, bringing in $350 million at the box office, mainly thanks to Chinese audiences who went out to see the movie in droves. Number 9, The Twilight Saga: Breaking Dawn Part 2. Now, young adult fantasy fiction is a genre that's produced not just a lot of hits over the years, but a lot of great movies as well. Sadly, Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2 does not fall into that latter category, even though it more than qualifies as a hit by bringing in nearly $850 million at the box office when it debuted in 2012. And look, I kind of feel like I need to clarify right now. I mean, I'm not a Twilight hater. Just look at me. You could have taken one look at this and assumed that, rightly, I've seen all of these movies at least twice. But while there are some highlights in the Twilight Saga, sadly Breaking Dawn Part 2 ends things on a rather flat note. From the abomination of a CGI child vampire to a climactic battle that destroys its own stakes, this Part 2 has a multitude of problems that stop it from being a compelling climax. Some of these were admittedly unavoidable, like the decision to have Jacob, Bella's former love interest, fall in love with Bella's newborn daughter due to werewolf magic, but of course, some of those issues are exactly what book readers signed up for with this adaptation, and as a result, it didn't stop the franchise from bringing in a whole load of money for this final outing. Number 8, Thor: Love and Thunder. Life in the MCU's Phase 4 got off to a bit of a rocky start. However, it wasn't until Thor: Love and Thunder released following the Doctor Strange sequel that it was confirmed that the wider MCU franchise was in its worst ever rut. And that particularly stung because if there was one of those Phase 4 projects that you would have banked on being good, it probably would have been Thor: Love and Thunder. Thor Ragnarok itself was a turning point back to greatness for Marvel pre-Infinity War, and with the same creatives back for another round, what could possibly go wrong? Well, sadly, what director Taika Waititi and star Chris Hemsworth did was take everything that was fun about Ragnarok and push it far beyond the levels of charming and into the realms of painfully unfunny and kind of cringeworthy. Hell, sometimes it was so bad it was kind of embarrassing. It was like, how was this the same director and writer that made this great film, and now they're doing something like this? That all being said though, the film that marked a new low for the franchise in terms of quality still managed to pull in over $750 million. And this is more, by the way, than some of the other multiverse saga outings, including Black Widow, Shang-Chi, Eternals, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, The Marvels, Captain America: Brave New World, and even Thunderbolts from this year, all of which, especially Thunderbolts, are better movies. movies, even Quantumania. I know it might sound controversial, I don't even love Quantumania that much, but I'd much rather sit down and watch that film again than watch Love and Thunder. Number 7. Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides. After Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl introduced audiences to Johnny Depp's swashbuckling Captain Jack Sparrow, a beloved movie franchise was firmly established. This was quickly followed by 2 sequels in Dead Man's Chest and At World's End, both of which landed just either side of the billion-dollar mark. This 4th outing came in 2011 and, well, it simply just wasn't the same. Though there was just a year between movies 2 and 3, On Stranger Times came 4 years after At World's End and was unable to boast the vitally important support of Keira Knightley's Elizabeth Swann and Orlando Bloom's Will Turner. The drop in quality across the board was notable, and yet, on the good faith that the franchise had earned since 2003, this was not actually reflected in the box office figures. On Stranger Tides crossed the billion-dollar mark and ultimately earned just $20 million shy of Dead Man's Chest, arguably the best in the entire series. Number 6. Jurassic World Dominion. Now, most legacy sequels come and go with more chance of detracting from a film's legacy rather than adding to it. Still, there was promise when the original Jurassic World launched. It wasn't spectacular, but it was solid enough, and audiences agreed, allowing the long-awaited follow-up to pull in an incredible $1.6 billion at the box office. 3 years later, when Fallen Kingdom was released, though, the quality of the film dipped lower, arguably, than even Jurassic Park 3, something that was no easy feat. Yet, though the poor sequel grossed less than its predecessor, it still brought in a very tasty $1.3 billion at the box office. Now, while those 2 films have their fans, nary a soul has a kind thing to say about Part 3, Jurassic World Dominion. Thanks perhaps to the promise of seeing dinosaurs roaming free across the world, something that wasn't even part of the central story when all was said and done, by the way, Dominion just snuck over the billion-dollar mark at the box office. Diminishing returns were clear, however, and it was no surprise then when the franchise made a pivot following the release of that movie, bringing in a whole new cast and creative team for the next one. Number 5. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutant Mayhem proved in 2023 that it is possible to make a great TMNT film, but the filmmakers in Hollywood did not get that memo back in 2014. Following in the wake of Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, comic book movies began to take note and then adopt a darker, grittier tone. And sadly, this didn't work for a lot of heroes, and it certainly didn't work for those in a half shell. Dark, gritty, and grounded made for a rather bland, boring, and ugly cinematic outing for Raphael, Leonardo, Donatello, and Michelangelo, and yet the movie still made enough money to greenlight an equally bad sequel, Out of the Shadows. On a budget of just $125 million, the film reached almost $500 million in revenue, likely based on the name of the flick alone. However, once the sequel was released and audiences actually, knew what to expect, it's probably no surprise that Out of the Shadows brought in less than half of what the original managed. Number 4, the Transformers franchise. Outside of 2023's Transformers 1, which, quite ironically, is easily the best outing in the franchise from a quality perspective, no modern-day Transformers film has pulled in less at the global box office than $440 million. Though, considering the astronomical budgets in play of over $200 million, the $605 million return for The Last Knight and the aforementioned $440 million for The Rise of the Beasts were all considered as underperforming. However, on the other side of that coin is the incredible success seen by the first 2 movies, Transformers and Revenge of the Fallen, which pulled in over $1.5 billion between them, before Dark of the Moon and Age of Extinction both joined the billion-dollar club. And amazingly, all of this money has been brought in by a franchise with few genuinely good entries, namely 1986's Transformers the movie and 2018's spin-off Bumblebee, and of course Transformers 1, which I've already mentioned. All the other movies, however, while they of course look spectacular, I mean there's no real debate to be had about that, have very little going on, if anything, under the surface. It's all style over substance, and the style's not even all that good outside the core visuals, but hey, for years this absolutely worked for the robots in disguise. Number 3, Minions. When Despicable Me was first released back in 2010, Steve Carell's Gru was somewhat overshadowed by his army of yellow little freak sidekicks. The Minions then took over the world by storm. They were incredibly popular, and you couldn't move without seeing their faces on merchandise and, of course, on your aunt's Facebook page every single time you went online. Naturally, it wasn't too long before their popularity was milked with a spin-off, a sequel to that spin-off, and a further sequel that is set to release in 2026. The Minions movie is what we're focusing on here though, and that released in 2015 between Despicable Me 2 and Despicable Me 3, with neither Gru nor Lucy nor the girls in sight, and still earned itself an incredible $1.59 billion at the box office. And this was the highest grossing entry in the franchise at this time, and is a record that's still to be beaten 10 years later. It was a successful cash grab then, undoubtedly, but it was forgettable at best as a movie and outright cringeworthy at worst. Still, if the franchise keeps bringing in the big bucks like it has been, don't expect Minions 3 to the last we see of those horrors. Number 2, The Lion King. Now there is a reason Disney keeps remaking its classics, shamefully banking on nostalgia and the popularity of some of the most famous animated movies of all time, with few exceptions, almost guarantees every time a huge pile of money. Though Snow White famously bombed, that's an exception against the likes of Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, and Alice in Wonderland, all of which grossed over $1 billion each. However, none of them came close to matching The Lion King's $1.6 billion haul when that released in 2019. Based on the name alone and off the back of the wild success of Jon Favreau's The Jungle Book 3 years earlier, reimagining The Lion King was always going to earn a huge amount of money. It didn't matter how good or bad it was, but for the record, it was, well, yeah, pretty bad. In part, that's because it wasn't so much a reimagining or a remake of the story as much as it was telling the exact same story again in a realistic aesthetic, which achieved absolutely nothing other than rob the film of so much of its character. After the hype of seeing The Lion King once again die down, it's no surprise that Mufasa The Lion King failed to bring in even half of what its predecessor grossed 5 years earlier. Number 1, a Minecraft movie. A Minecraft movie is kind of an enigma. Jared Hess's film grossed just over $950 million at the box office, coming agonizingly close to joining Mario and Luigi in the billion-dollar club, while also being completely eviscerated by critics. More so than that though, even the people who were excited to see this film in theaters seemed more motivated by irony and memes than, actually thinking that it looked any good. There was a lot going against the film. The trailers didn't inspire much hope that it would be actually any good. It came off the back of 2 Razzie nominations in 1 year for Jack Black for Dear Santa and the also crap Borderlands, and there was the baffling decision to make it, at least in part, a live-action movie. Now, there's no denying that the likes of Jack Black and Jason Momoa and Jennifer Coolidge all helped in selling tickets, and certainly there were plenty of moments that went viral and took the internet by storm where, even if you've not seen the film yourself, you definitely know certain beats from it. However, it is kind of important to remember that sending cinemas into a wild frenzy with the phrase chicken jockey does not make a good movie. But hey, what do I know? It's made more money than I will ever see ever in my life.